now the Shia. I have to say Shia, sorry. Last time
I might say it later
some
myself.
people, yeah. The Shia actually recently many fabrication. In fact, they came to me to argue because the Khutbah al-Jum'ah I speak of the Sahaba last week, and they came to argue with me. Then I told the people, two people came to me. They're supposed to be scholars in Shia. I said, please, can you read Ayat al-Kursi for me? Ayat al-Kursi. I said, oh, you're going to test us? I said, no. Let's start our talk to read Ayat al-Kursi. It's only one ayah. If you don't know, it's 255 in Surah Bakr. I know it. I believe it or not. He start Ayat al-Kursi. It's completely wrong. First, I kept it quiet in the beginning. I said, read Surah Al-Fatiha. And even Surah Al-Fatiha, both of them, they have no idea what Surah Al-Fatiha is. They try to read, but it's completely wrong. And then before we start, I say, you're going to tell me, you want to argue with me about Abu Bakr as-Siddiq or the Sahaba, and you don't know how to recite Surah Al-Fatiha and Ayat al-Kursi. So what's wrong with it? I said, completely wrong. Completely wrong. And I recited Fatiha for them and Ayat al-Kursi with them. I said, brother, leave the office now. If you're not leaving the office, you're gonna regret for the rest of your life. I don't want to argue. At the same time, I don't want him to speak anything from the Sahaba and get angry. His history. And when he saw I'm ready to fight, they left. My point here, you're gonna hear this a lot, especially the new Muslims, with all my respect for you. And you actually even gonna hear it more or a lot also. You're gonna hear this story about speaking about the companion of Rasulullah and the Quran. Believe it or not, those people didn't know even to read the Quran. Plus, give me attention here. How many surah in the Quran? 114 surah. They make in 116 surah. They add. When they said Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Umar and Uthman, they changed the Quran. They claim they changed the Quran. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, changed the Quran. There is no way, Jose. So we're going to speak now and continue, inshallah. Yusuf is going to speak about it more. And if I have any question in the end, inshallah. Brother Yusuf.
And you broke the ice on saying the S word. So there's a couple of talks later that we're going to get into some of the controversial issues that we are going to cover tonight. It's a heart of their deen. I mean, for you new Muslims, I don't want to bombard you with all this stuff. Me, I found out, organically. I worked in a company in the GCC, and it was majority Shia. And I was having these ideas thrown at me from a very early in Saudi and Bahrain.
And Bahrain.
Yeah. Bahrain mainly is a majority Shia.
Bahrain, what's Bahrain? Is one of the islands in Saudi Arabia become like a kingdom now.
And I mean, I had a bit of my beliefs altered initially because I ran to a lot of Sunnis. And that's when I was talking to the Imam here about getting this series together because I wanted to educate new Muslims especially. So what happened to me does not happen to you because they're very clever. They have very good words. They have very good arguments. They're very sensible. They come at you very reasonably. And if you're new and you don't know a lot of books, you don't know a lot of sources to go to, they will get you. There's no question about that. I ended up obviously researching, as I talked about in the opening last week, and was able to find the truth. But you said something very telltale last week when you said someone would be out of the fold of Islam if they say an ill word about Abu Bakr Siddiq. And after we saw last week what we are going to see tonight, there will be little doubt in your mind that is a correct statement. Obviously, when you're going to see tonight, especially if we get into part 2, what this man meant for the very Quran that we read, for the judicial system, for so much stuff that we've taken it, for granted over the years, he laid out the framework for that. because he had two unique challenges, and we're going to talk about both of them. But the main challenge was he was the first leader without Rasulullah. Before, you needed to understand an ayah, you walk down the block, you not, hey, Rasulullah, can I come in? What does this mean? And you got the tafsir right there on the spot. But for the first time in Islamic history, that was not there. And we are going to go through now, as last week we left off, with the end of the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we are now going to begin the second half of Abu Bakr's journey, 2 illustrious years that he led the Khalifa. We are going to look at from day one what he had to deal with, the way that he handled it. There's so many lessons that we are going to get into tonight, so many powerful lessons. And last week, of course, where we've been, we looked at his tremendous commitment. We looked at him being a companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the cave. He's one of the ones who stayed after, the talks to gain more. He was always asking questions, always there. We went through his background, his knowledge of genealogy, and how that helped to serve the companions. We looked at, his trip in his hijrah, where he talked about the companion of the cave and the ayah relating to that has immortalized Abu Bakr Siddiq. We talked about the very sad moment where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this mountain of a man, of virtue, of strength, had to be carried in to the masjid. And he did that because he wanted the companions to see that he was endorsing Abu Bakr Siddiq to lead the Salah. We saw what happened the next time, where he opened the curtains to his house and he had the smile and he was laughing. One of his last days here in this mortal realm. And he said, we're in good hands. The Ummah is in good hands. It was his endorsement. Everyone saw that. So now we are going to begin after that day. And I always like to say that you could judge a man, the most real accurate judgment of a man is how is he when he gets power? How is a man when he's tested? Tested with wealth, tested with stress. Did Abu Bakr's deen become fragile as he was tested? We'll answer those questions tonight. Or did it become better than ever? How was his leadership? How was his morals? We talked about him and Umar last week. They would compete with each other for who could do the best deeds. We are going to see tonight if that changed. Was he taking a lot of money from the Muslims as the leader? We're going to answer those questions. We are going to go through every aspect of his leadership, inshallah, time permitting. So, we will begin. Yes, sir.
What is Shia?
I will talk to you after the presentation. That would take up all of our time here for this one. It's a very loaded subject. It is another sect.
Hold on one second. When I asked the question, Shia, brother, he just become Muslim a month ago. Just even 1 month ago. That's why you asked this question. So that's why, inshallah, we're going to explain that, inshallah. Sorry for that.
Inshallah, no worries. Clarification there. So, Rasulullah happens. We talked about that at the end of last week. Immediately, you see the word travels throughout Medina. Eventually, the word reached Mecca. Eventually, the word reached all the different tribes around Arabia. There was women crying, screaming. There was men in disbelief. Umar ibn Khattab, no, the messenger of Allah will come back. And if anyone challenged, no one wanted to challenge Umar. We'll talk about Umar, inshallah, in a couple of weeks. I think you have the burial one next week, correct?
Yeah.
Washington. So in 2 weeks' time, inshallah, we will cover the biography of Umar. Umar ibn Khattab was a very tough, intimidating, physical man. He's out there saying to the people, how dare you say that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is dead? That's impossible. He will return. He will come back. There was disbelief. This moment, the Ummah could have been broken forever. You could have had deviations in all different directions. We are going to see some still happen regardless. But this is a moment where a man seizes his moment in history, where a man takes charge, where a man comes through and he sets everybody straight and sets the new path. And Abu Bakr rose to that challenge immediately. He called everyone and he said, for those of you who worship Muhammad, no, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is dead, but no, Allah is living. And then he immediately went and he recited Surah 3:144, which was the ayahs you're very familiar with, referencing the mortality of Rasulullah and calling on the Muslims to, when you're going to retreat in battle, if Rasulullah dies, the Ummah is still here. The message is still here. You don't abandon your cause. You don't abandon what you do. And he provided that moment of clarity. When you saw all this uncertainty around, it was going to break. It was going to fragment. People were going to go off in different directions. They were giving up. No. The one who sent him is real. The one who sent him is still alive. And Abu Bakr seizes that moment. It's one of his more, you could say, arguably his best moments in his whole Khalifa. Right there in the beginning when things could have went awry, he pulled everyone down and he brought them back to focus to remind them why we are all here. Why does this matter? Now, next you would find one of the, you were talking about the Shia earlier, one of the more controversial moments in Islamic history. What took place in the courtyard of Banu Saida, known as Saqifa, is a very famous event in Islamic history. You listen to one side, you will hear that two men barged in and threatened and brought violence to seize the Khalifa. You read from our authentic sources, you will see something completely different. What happened was you had, again, in this moment of uncertainty, you had the Ansar, who were the helpers of Medina, who were the ones who helped the Muslims as they were Hijrah for you new Muslims, Ansar helper, who these people were. The Ansar had came through and they nominated Sa'd ibn Ubaidah as being the Khalifa from the Ansar. You had Umar, you had Abu Bakr, and a contingent from the Mujahirun, the migrants, the ones who came with Rasulullah ﷺ from Mecca. They were there, on the other side. And there was a statement from Rasulullah ﷺ, authenticated statement, that stated that the Khalifa must come from the Quraysh. There was no debate on this. The Quraysh, why? Because they were the bloodline of Ishmael. They had the prophetic bloodline. The Quraysh were the ones to control the Khalifa. Now, other races, other groups of people, other tribes, they could be governors. They could be advisors. They could have prominent positions. But the Khalifa had belonged to the Quraysh. Upon hearing that, the Ansar, they backed down. The Ansar did not challenge. There was some hostilities initially, in the beginning, according to some sources, but overall, calm ruled the day. And you had Abu Bakr there giving an eloquent speech about the rights of the Khalifa to the people. And you had Abu Bakr, again, in his humility, he did not, I nominate myself. No, of course not. Abu Bakr, in fact, nominated Umar and another gentleman by the name of Abu Ubaidah. So he nominated two different individuals other than himself. And something amazing happened at that moment. Umar stood up and he said, there's no way I'm going to lead the Ummah with Abu Bakr is standing right here. There's no way. It wouldn't be ethical for me to do that. He understood this man, his accomplishments, his taqwa, his ability far outweighs mine at the current moment in time. There is no way. He reached out and made the pledge to Abu Bakr, which was followed by the rest of the Sahaba that were there in that courtyard. And from that moment, you had a new Khalifa. Now, I would say to the Shia, if this was an usurping or taking power of the caliphate, there were a lot more Ansar than there were Mujahirun. You had a lot more Ansar in Medina. They outnumbered. Medina was a much larger city. It was a more agricultural city than that of Mecca. If this was something that was so against what the Ansar were wanting to do, or something that was so immoral, you would have had rebellion. The Ansar would have been able to take this back by force, but that simply did not happen. You had immediately pledging, you had peace, and you moved on. You didn't see this. Now, they will still claim, and of course with their sources, and questionable sources at that this was a conquest. But if we look at it really, like I said, we get into it, very little research, by the way, you will see 100% that this was not the case. So we had a Khalifa, in place. Now, there was another issue that was going on. We talked about this a little bit last week. You had the army.
Something very important for you. بني ساعدة عمر بن الخطاب came أن أبو بكر الصديق الصحابة الأنصار المهاجرين everybody there أنصار المهاجرين you mentioned here for the Shia and some Shia actually watching us now on Facebook. They claim the Shia you mentioned here they claim that when they making pledge allegiance with Abu Bakr Siddiq Ali he delayed to come to give allegiance. But the reason what? They are washing Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. They're washing him, actually take care of his janazah. Take care of his janazah, the funeral. And then after that, he came. Number one. Number two, Ali, after that, his sons, after Fatima, Hassan and Hussein from Fatima, he married actually after that, have 8 wives. After that, one after one after one. One of the kids, number one, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, his son. Ali, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Ali ibn Abi Talib. And Umar, Ali ibn Abi Talib. The great Sahaba, Ali choose. Oh, the Shia actually was that. The story about delay is fabricated story. Go to the real stories for Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, who choose Abu Bakr as-Siddiq.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, because I was coming to that in a minute, because that was another one of the things that they had claimed was that Ali did not show up. Well, as the Sheikh just pointed out, he was attending to the burial rites of Rasulullah. So could you imagine what the Shia would have said if Abu Bakr and Umar would have came in there while he was washing the body of the Messenger and said, hey, pledge allegiance right now? I mean, they would have said, oh, this is the most heartless, this is the most non-respectful act a person could ever do. They would criticize him for that. So they took the most moral position. He's got these duties to attend to. The next day, literally, he came and he pledged. It was the next day. There was no 6 months delay, as you will see some from the inauthenticated sources. They will claim it was 6 months. Some claim Some will claim that they even murdered Fatima. We're not going to get into all that tonight. We don't have enough time, but there are some of their bogus sources that even claim that there was a murder that took place. And we can, I discussed this in private with you guys. We don't have time, obviously, for that tonight. So also another thing that happened, so immediately as Abu Bakr assumes this mantle as the Khalifa, you have 2 major problems. You have some apostasy that was already starting during the time of Rasulullah, some false prophets, and you have massive, which we're going to look at here going into the next few minutes. But you also had this army of Osama ibn Zayd. This was a huge moment here of controversy. You had Osama ibn Zayd was 18 years old. You had people from the Ansar, people from the Mujahirun saying, I am not going to serve with this kid. I'm not going to do it. You also had a contingent saying, we don't believe this is the best thing to do because you have all this apostasy now is starting to rise up around you. If we send one of our main armies to Sham, well, who's going to defend Medina? So you had 2 major issues going on here. Abu Bakr, again, he rises to the moment and he says something that no one could dispute. Rasulullah ordered that army. Would Rasulullah order anything that was going to be detrimental to the Muslims? This had to be divine judgment. Of course, no doubt. So against the wishes, of the Sahaba, Abu Bakr took the sole position. I'm standing by the statement of the Messenger, and that began the process of our modern judicial system. We take the Quran, number 1, statement, Sunnah of the Messenger, number 2. And he enacted it. He lived it right there on the battlefield. And there's a key moment that happened also after this. Umar confronted him. And this just again shows the amount of respect that Abu Bakr had commanded among the other Sahaba. Umar was again saying, you can't do this. Put somebody else in place. Abu Bakr went up and he grabbed him by the beard. And if we'll get to Umar in a couple of weeks, inshallah, nobody grabbed Umar, by the beard. That would have been just asking, there's going to be something's going to get hit. Something's going to happen, there. But Umar didn't do anything. In fact, he backed down to greed because Abu Bakr was not the type of man who would do that. But this was an issue that the Messenger ﷺ had. You have to do this. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. The army marched on, and long story short on that, for time reasons, we don't have time to cover all the occurrences of that army. It was a resounding success. And we're going to get to the apostates here and how that was handled back on the home front. So you had the Muslim army flex their muscle. They flexed their power, both to the Romans, to the Persians, as well as to these apostates that we're about to get into right now, who decided they wanted to just take the opportunity of the death of the Messenger ﷺ to just then rebel outwardly. Before we get to them, there's one more Shia controversy we want to discuss. And that is the Fandak situation, the inheritance of Fatima. In the Battle of Khaybar, there was a property that was given as a gift to the messenger. So it was a big orchard, date palms.
Khaybar used to be only Jews. And Prophet Muhammad after the Khandaq, the battle, he take all Khaybar tribes for Rasulullah and the Sahaba. Yes.
So you have this property, this orchard, this massive field that was left to him as a gift after they had conquered this territory. The messenger had been quoted as stating that prophets do not leave inheritance.
Yes.
Prophets leave their inheritance as charity. So you have this conflict, and again, a source of some of the Shia anger and hatred for Abu Bakr Siddiq was that he stole from Fatima. He stole, is the word they use. He was a thief when all he was doing was following the sunnah of the messenger. Now let's ask this from a logical standpoint. His daughter, Aisha, was married to the Prophet. Yeah. Umar's daughter was married to the Prophet. So if I'm about money and my daughter is married to this man and he's got a lot of it, do I want to take that and give it to the Muslims for charity if I'm really greedy? Or do I want to take that property from my daughter? Hey, can you throw your father a little bit here or there? Obvious. It just doesn't make any sense when you look at it from a logical perspective. This was a sunnah decision. And we are going to look later as we get to the death of Abu Bakr, how he handled his own death in terms of his inheritance. He wanted his life to emulate the messenger any way possible, in every single endeavor. The messenger was buried here, I want to be buried right next to him. If he did this, I want to do that. And you'll see how Abu Bakr died is exactly the same way in terms of what he said his dying bed. We'll get to that later. So, the Ridda Wars, the biggest section we're going to cover today. A lot of new Muslims, I didn't know about the Ridda Wars for a couple of years. It was actually through Shia, basically. Again, I learned about these Ridda Wars, known as apostasy wars. You'll find from the Shia and the Orientalists, and we'll look at some of their challenges here in a few minutes also as well, some of the hatred and hateful things that they have said in relation to the Sahaba for the way they handled these. So you had different types, of apostates. You had some who straight abandoned Islam altogether. Some went right back to the idols. They went right back to the practices before. You had some apostates who said, we are not going to pay zakat to him. We pay to Rasulullah, but we're not paying zakat to him. Then there were some that said, hey, we ain't paying zakat at all, no matter who's in there. We shouldn't have to do that. You had some that we're going to get to a funny but true story later. I don't want to pray Salah. Or I don't want to wake up for Fajr. I don't want to wake up for Isha. I don't want to be up that late. I just don't want to do that. I'll stay with the rest of the Islam thing, but those prayers, we got to get rid of them. So you have a situation, here. And also you had the other type. You had the prophets. And always throughout history, we've had a ton of them. We've had the false prophets here in the West, your Joseph Smiths, your L. Ron Hubbards. If anyone's ever heard of Joseph Smith, he literally copied a lot of what happened with the Messenger Sallallahu and pretty poorly impersonated him, if you will. We don't have time for Joseph Smith. That could be another talk for another night. But you had a couple of them. You had Al-Aswad al-Ansi in Yemen. This was a prophet who came up around the time of the Messenger Sallallah's life. He was involved, was about to be dealt with. And then you had the famous one that we're going to look at later, Musaylama, the liar. And some of his, what he would do is quite clever. He would have people come in on a kind of delegate to, Medina, and they would listen and try to get ayah, and then they would copy them. And then they would take the ayah back to where he was in the Banu Hanifa clan. He would recite the ayah and say it was his. And then there's examples that we can find in some authenticated sources where he would have some of his own original material. And it was bad, needless to say, some of his signs from God, if you will. So he wasn't plagiarizing the Messenger, he really didn't have very much poetic skills or other things. So that was the other level of apostate. There was a few females also during this period of time who were also trying to take over Arabia because they saw, okay, the Muslims are in disarray. They've lost the messenger. We can beat them now, and we can seize their riches. So you had all of those. So Abu Bakr, again, right in the crosshairs, under tremendous stress. What am I going to do, about this? All the Sahaba, almost overwhelmingly, were telling him, just kind of ease in. They'll come back. Don't worry about it. But no. What do we stand for? Can you allow someone to claim they're a Muslim and pick and choose what aspects of the deen they choose to follow? And there's that whole big debate now. I'm not to get into that one either. There's a whole loaded issue here of if someone does not pray, are they a Catholic? That debate's been going around for quite some time. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requests you to do something, and you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you don't do said thing, that is disbelief. Because you're acknowledging his divinity, you're acknowledging his wisdom, you're acknowledging his might, his power, his control, and you are choosing to say, he didn't really mean that. I'll follow that one. I'll follow what I feel. So if you would have allowed this to spread, you would have had one half of Arabia over here say, we don't have to do that. That's not part of it. Those ayah in the Quran are a joke. We don't need them. Take them out. You would have had over here this one say, we believe in 80% of the Quran, but we also have a messenger over here as well. We're going to follow that 20% from that messenger. And you would have just had a big cluster mess where no one would have had anything resembling a consistent, religion. It would have been a nightmare. Islam would have perished. Abu Bakr saw the writing on the wall. He ignored the other opinions. He sent 11 commanders, and he went to begin. He went to make the Islam. Obviously, under Islamic terms, these people can repent. They can join back. But if they choose to fight the Muslims, they will be treated as apostates. Their property becomes halal. They are enemy combatants at that point. They have relinquished all rights. And the other aspect of that was, I mentioned earlier, we had Osama ibn Zayd's army as well. So now who is going to defend, the areas around Medina should these people try to attack? Well, in the Riddle Wars, unfortunately, you have a lot of people who misrepresent and make it seem like all of these tribes were filled with nothing but apostates. That's just not true. There were so many good people among them who stayed with the Islamic principles. They went and pledged allegiance to Abu Bakr, and they became very valuable assets during this period of time. They became spies, infiltrators, if you will. They were people that did guerrilla warfare, on behalf of the Muslims and really helped to get it going. They were scouts for us. So you have that aspect as well. Another thing these people wanted was, if you look at Jahiliyyah times, a few months ago, I did a lecture on the messenger, so I was defending the messenger of Allah. And we looked at Zayd, his adopted son, and how Zayd ended up in Mecca. Zayd was in a water hole, one day with his mother. All of a sudden, some men came in with swords, and they just captured everyone. This was the life of Jahiliyyah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he ended this. He made it to where a woman could travel from all the way east, all the way west, and you would not have a robbery, you would not have any of those things. He brought order and peace. And there were plenty of Bedouins out there, plenty of people who were they were itching for the good old days, where they didn't have to work, where they could rob a merchant on a caravan course. They were trying to bring things back to the way that they were, and they were longing for the good old days. Now, during this period of time, you'll have a lot of commentaries also written by Orientalists and by, again, the Shia. They will say that Abu Bakr was a bloodthirsty tyrant. They will say that he, was offended by the zakah, that he just wanted to go out and have a bloodlust, so to speak. Now, I want to give some more descriptions of some of the things these apostates did. And I want someone to ask themselves the question, do these sound like good people to you? Because if you read a book from an Orientalist, and for you guys to review, Orientalists are basically Western philosophers and scholars of history who basically interpret Islam through a modern day liberal, or at the time, a liberal lens. They are going to be heavily biased, obviously, against a lot of Islamic practices and beliefs. And then, of course, the Shia, as we talked about earlier. You had a group of women in Yemen, and what these women did was, upon hearing of the death of Rasulullah, they went out in public naked, dancing, fornicating with any man that was willing to participate in them. They were singing songs celebrating his death. all kinds of just nasty, horrid things from the Jahiliyyah period of time. Now, these sound like good people. Do these sound like innocent, people who Abu Bakr just wanted to go out and punish for not paying a couple of goats worth of zakah? Or these sound like pure, decadent, you could say just the word I'm looking for, lack of a better term, trashy, if you will. If you had a disagreement with any human being, much less the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you can intelligently challenge that person. The Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, opened for debates. There were several discussions that he had over the course of his life with people who did not believe. But you go and you celebrate someone's death, and then you celebrate their death in this way. And needless to say, Abu Bakr gave them a very bad punishment when they finally were caught. You had a lot of these women were Jewish apostates from Yemen. This was another widespread practice going along with the refusals to pay zakat. You had many bloody battles with Tulayha. It was another prophet, basically from the region, as well. Along with, I mentioned earlier, there was a woman named Suja, as well as Musaylim. They had one of the more interesting unions during this period of time, because as the apostates were one by one getting beaten, because a lot of them were isolated tribes, you had this female prophet, and then this male prophet, they get married. And they form a union. So you make a television, right? You have prophets in love, or something to that effect. But they had a union, and the agreement was Musaylama would give her 1/3 of the land of Arabia after he conquered it. And he had probably the best dowry you can say in Islamic history. For the new Muslims, dowry is what we pay to a woman when we marry her. It could be this amount of money, it could be a gift, it could be a house, it could be, in the days, it was camels or different farm animals, things like that. Well, he offered her that her tribe could miss the Fajr and the Isha prayer. And when she went back to her tribe, she was happy. And they said, "Oh, come on, madame. You're a queen. You're a prophetess. You can get more than this, from him." But that was the dowry. Well, he'll get a revelation from God that you don't have to pray Isha and you don't have to pray Fajr anymore. So we can see what this is about. Just a few cases in point, what this was about. This was not a rebellion against tyranny. This was, I want to follow my desires. That's what this was. I want to go right back to the good old days. As I said, the days of the robberies, the days of the conquest, the days of the drunkenness, the days of the fornication, of the zina. This is what they wanted. These were not good, honest people who were practicing good faith societies, who were trying to live their life. We know who these types are. So you had that situation there. So you ended up having an agreement between the two of them. Now, during the life of the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just again to show what kind of a person this Musaylama was, he sent a delegation, gentleman, by the name of Habib ibn Zayd al-Ansar to meet with him, try to make terms of peace. This gentleman was warned by the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is going to be a dangerous mission. These people are not good faith. And they sent him there. He said, "I want this challenge. I want to go there. I want to see what we can come up with." And they captured him, and they forced him to basically acknowledge this Musaylama was a prophet. And if he did not, they would cut a limb off every single time. And he refused to relent. He refused to concede. He said, "No way. La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah." He refused to relinquish that statement. They cut him until he died. So again, these are not, the best of humans, needless to say. So that's just a little bit of a background. And now you can see that you have a conflict coming here. You have this Muslim army to bring back all these people to the fold of Islam. On the other hand, you have a false prophet who's mobilizing, merging, forming tribal bonds with other tribes and other so-called prophets. There's going to have to be a conflict. There can be no peaceful resolution here. And it came to a head in a place called Yamama. This was a massively bloody battle that cost the lives of 10,000 apostates. Between 500 and 600 Muslims perished that day fighting the Banu Hanifa clan. In Allah's sense of irony, an event happened when Musaylama was ultimately killed by a gentleman named Washi. Now, anyone who knows Islamic history, Washi was the slave who killed the uncle Hamza of the Prophet in the Battle of Uhud. He had become Muslim later on. He couldn't even look at the Messenger Sallallahu face. He was an African slave. He was dangled his freedom. He wanted to kill Abu Bakr, kill Ali, kill the Messenger, kill Umar, kill Hamza. This was the offer by Hind, kill one of them.
By Hind.
Yeah, Hind, who was the wife, just Islamic history there, was the wife of Abu Sufyan, who was one of the fiercest opponents of the Messenger of Allah. So he was an excellent spear thrower. He used to be able to throw through the ring on a woman's head with perfect accuracy. And this evil woman dangled his freedom in front of him to kill a righteous man, and he killed him. But later on, he converted to Islam. He could not look at the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu face. He couldn't. And I remember I told the story last week of the man with the arrow as he sat in front of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and he said, I addressed that arrow and it killed your son. And Abu Bakr handled it in the way a Muslim would handle it. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored my son through you. And he honored you through my son. That you become Muslim. And this Washi gentleman, he killed Muslim. He threw a spear right through his heart. And he saved countless more deaths. So again, Allah's sense of irony and planning of taking this man who's linked to this, one of the most famous early murders in Islamic history, became a hero just a few short years later as he took this evil man out and saved countless lives. So one of the good things I wanted to add in here that was going on. So Abu Bakr now, after this battle of Yama, he has a real tough quandary or decision. You had 500 to 600 Muslims die in one battle, not counting the other 2 or 3 here, 2 or 3 there, 2 or 3 there. It was adding up. We were losing something. The Quran was memorized. In the Quran at that point in time, you had Zayd ibn Thabit to keep it on bones, on skin, but mostly it was trusted in the hearts and the mind of the Sahaba. And it had always been that way. Abu Bakr now saw a problem. We have to do something.
And also some of the wife of Rasulullah tablets. Wife of Rasulullah keep the tablets of the Quran in their houses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you had some on skins, on animal bones, on leaves, date palm leaves, a variety of things. And of course, in the hearts and minds. And one of the arguments we often like to use with Christians, I tell them, hey, you can burn every Quran on earth. It's going to be back tomorrow. This is always one of those things that we've taken pride in. And it almost didn't come to be. Had Abu Bakr not, again, took another tough decision, because you had resistance on this. Zayd said, well, the messenger never asked for this to be put in a book. This is bit. And Umar yelled and said, no, this is a good thing. And you had Abu Bakr, of course, attesting to that fact as well. And off to the races we went. And of course, the Quran that we have, as we're going to get to the life of Umar and get to the life of Uthman, how just piece by piece, we got the codified versions of the Quran in the dialect that we see today. But it all started at this moment out of necessity. We were losing the memorizers, in the battles, and we had to have something stored just in case. And again, divine inspiration, there. So the apostasy was over. Abu Bakr had for this apostasy wars, I could do 2 or 3 lectures easily, filling up 3 hours going through the battles. We obviously didn't have time. We wanted to kind of focus on the outline of his deeds and his goals. But as these apostasy wars came to a conclusion, less than a year, Abu Bakr had again brought Islam to control Arabia.
Something very important, or Yusuf mentioned before, 2 things, Zayd ibn Haritha and also the zakat. And as brother Yusuf said, even Abu Bakr, Umar. So about the zakat now, about the battle all the way to Palestine, from Mecca, from Medina to Palestine, even in airplane take like 2 or 3 hours. And Rasulullah preparing Zayd ibn Haritha radiallahu anhu, Osama, the son of Zayd ibn Haritha, to go to the battle. And he died, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now was a problem. Also the brotherhood, also the people become male and female want to be a prophets. And another fitna. Plus the zakah. They refuse to give the zakah, the charity, only for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not for Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. But what are even the Sahaba? He mentioned Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and even Ali and the Sahaba. So do not think this because we have a calamity, we have hardship in Medina. And he swear by Allah, if the Rasulullah had a iqal is the robe of the camel, as order us for all those people to pay the robe of the camel, I will do that.
Yep.
And he insists Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to go for Osama Zayd ibn Haritha, the son of Zayd, to go to Palestine, and he insists to collect the zakah. And that's why the Islam spread after that.
Yeah, and the same worries. The same thing with the Quran, as well. I mean, he went against they were saying, no, this is the Rasulullah never put it in a book.
Go back to this issue. There's a Shia. What's us? They claim the Shia. They claim the Quran 116, 2 surah of Abu Bakr. And Umar and Uthman removed this from the Quran. They claim. And they brought it us now, Surah Fatima and Surah Al-Hussein and Surah Ali. That's shame. Of course, it's absolutely fabricated story. So the Shia, by the way, we're gonna speak about inshallah more details for you, inshallah. The Shia. But Shia, they claim they say Muslims, but not Muslims. Shia, by the way, you're online here. Shia, they are not Muslims, period. Some people, some of them believe in Allah, they pray with you. As far as he says, I am Shia, he's out of the Islam. He's not with us. Not he is with us. Not believe in Ali as a God. Or Ali is a prophet. Or Fatima is so and so and so. They're praising Ali, they're praising Fatima and praising Hussein. But why not Hassan? See, there's a story with that maybe in the future. But the key, those people you hear about it, they are completely out of the circle of Islam, period. Sorry for that.
Well, no worries. It's very similar to what you see with Christianity. I've always called Shia the kind of Catholics in Islam. In a way. You see how they venerate Fatima is very similar to how the Catholic Church venerates Mary. My best friend had died a few years ago, and it's the only time he'd ever find me in a church was to pay respect to his family. And I mean, I was just shocked. I had to leave with what was going on in there. It was just unbelievable. So I wasn't raised Catholic, so I had never seen any of these things. But it's very similar to what the Shia had to do with Fatima. I mean, I've heard so many things over the years from my time working with them and my time being within a classroom situations. I was teaching classes over there. It was unbelievable stuff I was being told. Yeah.
Or something also, Shia, please give me attention. Normally, when we pray Salah, Allahu Akbar, what will recite? You are new Muslims. What will recite? Al-Fatiha. Al-Fatiha, right? Believe it or not, the Shia, Allahu Akbar, Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wa Allahu Akbar. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, Allahu Akbar, Subhana Rabbi. سمع الله محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت على and تشهد instead سبحان ربي الأعلى اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله صل تشهد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. There's no Fatiha at all. No Fatiha. So that's why the Shia completely, not even the Salah, completely not like us. We say Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum. What they do, by the way, they finish the tashahhud, Salah is finished, like this, 3 times, like this. Okay? I say that with the Shia, but I know the Shia, my PhD, by the way, in the 4 madahib, plus the Shia. So we know the Shia very well, and unfortunately, there is nothing related to our deen, period. Ramadan, for example, normally we break fast what time? Sunset, right? No, until Isha, and they pray, they start eating, stop eating when sunrise. When sunrise, you stop. Not in the time of fasting. Fasting no sunrise, and Isha time. That's the fasting. So complete, even Hajj. I went 7 times for Hajj and Umrah, more Hajj, Umrah and more. I saw those people making Hajj completely different than us, completely different. Completely different and the way it's supposed to be for Hajj. And they have, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. We will say, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. They always, Ya Ali, Ya Hussein, Ya Ali, Ya Hussein, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. They always say that. So they are new Muslim here. And Brandon, you know about the Shia. Okay, for you, inshallah, when we sit together, I explain to Shia more, inshallah, to be careful about those people, inshallah. Sorry, online, and I decided not to speak. Brother Yusuf last week. It is not to speak about the Shia, but recently what happened yesterday in my office, I have to speak more and more now. Sorry for that.
Oh, no worries. And this something has to be said, because when you talk about Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, you cannot really, I mean, you'd be misleading people if you didn't mention these things, because that's what they're going to hear out there in discussions on YouTube videos and things like that. So we want everyone, especially the young here that are watching me in the Sheikh tonight, and you come across a YouTube video, you see someone cursing the Sahaba, they're sounding very convincing. Just know that what they're doing, they just have very good presentation. There's no substance behind it. Most of the stuff they're saying is straight fabrication, it's lies, it's half-truths, it's misleading, but they do it in such a beautiful package. I mean, I call it like junk food. You go look at a junk food restaurant, it looks nice, it's got lots of nice colors, it looks like a great place to eat. You go inside, they're soaking your beef in a moment. I mean, it's just all marketing and all image, but behind it is something, a disease. So we left off with the conclusion of apostasy and the collection of the Quran. The final challenge that Abu Bakr Siddiq had was dealing with the Persians and the Romans. And he had a man by the name of Khalid ibn al-Walid. You know, for those of you who hear that name for the first time, we'll get into that over the next few weeks a little bit more, who led the Iraqi, contingent, and later on would be moved over to Sham. In Abu Bakr's territory, we would find for the first time Islam would expand outside of Arabia. We found Islam moving into Iraq, and Islam moving into Sham, present-day Jordan. We would see it as we get to Umar, inshallah, in a few weeks. We will see how it expanded even more than that. But something had happened, unfortunately, of course, for him, was the end of his time. Abu Bakr Siddiq had taken a bath, cold bath one day, and all of a sudden he developed a fever. It was a 15-day, fever, no sign of relenting. And it's one of those things in life that just out of nowhere. I mean, his Khalifa had only been barely over 2 years. His time, we look at Umar coming up next, and we'll see what a long, reign he had. Abu Bakr had a lot going on, and it was only a 2-year period of time. Abu Bakr, when he was on his deathbed, was the same man that he was as a caliph. He refused to take 1 cent out of the Muslim treasury. There's a story where Umar said, Sheikh, you need to take 6,000 dinars. You've got to live. You cannot run your businesses and do all the things that a Khalifa has to do. You can't. You need to take this. He did not want to take it. He only took it because he realized what Umar said was true. He could not be a merchant, trade, be involved in business, and be an advisor, and coordinate the war effort, and send messages to troops, and all the stuff that he was doing. You needed a ruling. You didn't have Rasulullah anymore. You had to go to Abu Bakr, to do this. So again, he had to finally relinquish all that. When he first became the Khalifa, Umar and a companion were walking, and they were like, what's that over there? It was Abu Bakr on his knees milking the goat of an elderly woman who had no husband. And the woman said to him, now that you become the Khalifa, are you going to stop milking my goats? He said, no, I'll be over here every day like I usually was. You're not going to stop me from milking your goats. Now, eventually Umar, because of the responsibility, had to move to a different section of Medina, but he got someone to fill in his shoes. Could you imagine a world leader now milking the goats of an elderly woman? Could you imagine a world leader now doing anything beneficial for people, much less what this man was doing? No salary wanted, had to be forced to get paid. Still doing charity right up until he was the Khalifa, and still giving half of his wealth away, to 100% of his wealth, for the war effort. And when he died, as we get into this, one of the first things he said to Aisha was, I want you to tell her I did not take anything from Muslims. I did not, if it wasn't for Umar and for necessity, I would not have taken anything from the treasury. I did not use this position to take any amount of wealth. He wanted that to be like his, you could say, his eulogy, his epitaph, his final send-off. Let the Muslims know I did not take a penny, from them. Aisha started reciting poetry to him as he was deep in his sickness, and as Abu Bakr always was. He came, Quran 50, 19, and the stupor of death will come in truth. This is what you have been avoiding. All mankind, the fear of death. It's coming. This was one of his final words to his daughter. Then he went on, and said, that camel and that helper slave that I have, donate that in charity as well. That was all he owned. A small camel and then a slave that had always been with him, treated him good, who cooked, took care of the home, that type of thing. Donate that for charity. I don't want to leave one penny, behind. So here again, you see a man, everything that Rasulullah ﷺ did, he wanted to follow exactly. He requested, can you please bury me next to the Prophet? They buried him with his head right there by the shoulder of the Prophet ﷺ. And Abu Bakr was gone. He died the same way he lived. Humble, submission, always invoking Allah, going down with one of his final words, reciting the Quran as he always had before. He lived a life that, again, is an example for us all of what we can be, what's been taken from us. We as Muslims now, and I really want to close with this, a lot of us don't know our history. We don't know what it was like. We don't know what a leader is supposed to be because we've never seen it. We've never seen what a good government is. I know I shouldn't have. I've been in many countries. I've not seen a good government. But when Abu Bakr reigned, Rasulullah ﷺ reigned, these rightly guided caliphs that we're going to learn about, we're going to see, what could be, what is within the realm of human possibility. Because when we know, we can start demanding from those who are accountable to us, because ultimately they are here to serve us. As Abu Bakr on his dying breath, I was here to serve the Muslims, not the other way around. That's how he led, that's how he lived, and that's how he died. And I just hope everybody can go out. This was informative. Took as much away from it as you possibly could, and that you continue your adventure of knowledge. We've only covered a fraction. I mean, I could write 900 to 1,000 pages easily on this man's life, but compressing it into 2 one-hour lectures is a little bit hard. I hope everybody enjoyed it.
We love it. So, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, by the way, one of the great Sahaba. Plus, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Allah choose Abu Bakr as-Siddiq in many ayat in the Quran, and he's the greatest man. And not only that, when he went to Bani Sa'ida, when Brother Yusuf mentioned, everybody, a bigger problem, calamity and hardship, who can reach a chief from Ansar, 2 tribes of Ansar, and Quraysh. I didn't want everybody submit and agree. No question. Everybody quiet. That choose, yes. And he have 2.5 years. Our person. 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And something very important from the Shia now, they are watching us. They said, the Shia said, she chose for her father to bury next to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to bury next to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No, Rasulullah chose that himself first, and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And Umar, after that, he gave a choice. Can I be buried next to my friends? Who? Aisha. The one they're accusing Aisha or something else. They're accusing Aisha. Aisha, the best woman after Rasulullah, after the woman in the time of Rasulullah. Whoever say anything about Aisha is out of the circle of Islam. Surah An-Nur, 10 ayats. 10 ayats speaking about Aisha. For the Shia, they say no, not for Aisha, this is for somebody else. See, very important to understand this. Those people, they're accusing the great of the Sahaba. Who? Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman, and many of the great Sahaba. Some certain Sahaba with them, okay, but not the majority. The majority. May Allah protect us from those. Now, question, inshallah, from here, and also Sunnahfollowers and online, inshallah. Actually, I know some people actually in my Facebook, they text and hard for me to see what's going on, but if they can read us and call us and Sunnahfollowers is better. Sunnahfollowers, it's easy to hear your voice because I don't know how to control my camera here, inshallah. Here first, inshallah. The Shia, by the way, the Shia, they become after Uthman ibn Affan, the third Khalifa, the Caliphate. Abu Bakr, and after that Umar, and then Uthman. Uthman, the Shia started over there.
Yeah, we'll cover that.
And the one he killed, the second one, Umar, is called Abu Lu'la al-Majusi, is one of the Shia. The Shia right now praising in celebration that day, the one he killed Umar is celebrating that day. Those the Shia right now. Inshallah, no more, inshallah, we're going to speak about the more, inshallah. Online, inshallah, or here, inshallah. No, yes. Friends?
Parents.
Parents. Ibn Hafa, his father, he became an old man. He became Muslim.
Yeah.
He became, I think you spoke about last week.
Yeah, it was briefly mentioned, yeah.
Yeah, he became Muslim. He's old man, he became Muslim after that. Right? But he chose his old man. He brought his old man, his father, to Rasulullah. And Rasulullah says, why? I can go to him. So no, he's deserved to come to you and become Muslim. Yeah. Yeah, yes, other question.
Wasn't Ali a Khalifa too? Ali?
Ali?
Yeah.
The fourth one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The fourth one. Ali, the fourth one. But the people choose him.
Right.
But first, the great trials and tribulation in the history of Islam, in the time of Ali and Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. Ali and great. Honestly, myself, I hate to speak about this kind of trial and tribulation, but it hurt my feelings so much. Why? With hundreds of thousands of Sahaba compared to Rasulullah die of these battles. Mm-hmm. It's a great trial. That's why I hate to speak. I love the Sahaba. And I can, but they asked me actually recently, is which one you think who is right, Ali or Muawiyah? I say Ali. Why? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Zayd, Anas ibn Malik. Rasul in the time they building the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and everybody had a brick, except Usama and Anas. Anas have 2 bricks, and Rasulullah told them, "Will call you the corrupted group. He will the corrupted group will kill you." And who corrupted group? Muawiyah. So I believe Allah. I don't want to speak too much, honestly, but I believe Allahu A'lam, our knowledge, the Muawiyah group was the corrupted group.
Yes,
with this hadith. But I don't want to speak more because I don't want to make a mistake. Yes. You,
correct me if I'm mistaken, but Abu Bakr was the first one that kind of talked with Umar about writing down the Quran, having as in.
Well, he went to Zayd ibn Thabit, who was the scribe of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and because again that was necessity.
Yeah.
And they always say necessity is the mother of invention. And when all these reciters were starting to die in these battles and no end in sight for the fighting, it was like, well, what's going to happen?
Did they ever see not true copies being made by those that were claiming to be prophets or anything like that? And they were like, is that something that was a common occurrence? And they were like, that's something they saw during the battles, or is it more so didn't get to that point? You know what I mean?
They didn't get to that point. So later on, you have
actually, no one can change it. Zayd, when he started the Quran, predicted the Quran, they choose the Sahaba, the companions, choose the one who are authentic with the Quran, carry the Quran, and they used to write that for Rasulullah. So trust people. And number one, Abu Bakr Siddiq, as he mentioned, and Abu Bakr Siddiq, he lived in Aisha's house. And then after that, another Abu Bakr Siddiq, Umar, after that, he lived in Hafsa's house and Aisha's house. And then Uthman, he have more Kabi. Why? Because they conquered more Muslim country. And every tribe, one Quran. And the Quran in our hand, by the way, the Quran, in that time, the alphabet, there's no dots. So, like for example, Ba, there's a dot. Ta, 2 dots. Tha, 3 dots. Jim, 1 dot. Ha, there is no dot. Okay? And used to be no dots at all. Who start with writing the Quran? Very corrupted person. Who was teaching Quran, and in the time of the Khilafah al-Abbasiyya, after Muawiyah and his son Zayd, and he called Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. Remember this name, Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. He memorized the Quran, he was teaching Quran in film, and he became a chief of Iraq. And he's the one who started the Quran with the dots we have right now. So some corrupted people, but they still work for this. By the way, Hajjaj, the way the corrupted person, many Muslim countries conquered by him. But he killed the great of the Sahaba in Mecca and destroyed Mecca. The great of the Sahaba, the companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Hajjaj, he was not among the Sahaba, he's a Tabi'een. But he killed the great of the Sahaba. The grandson of Abu Bakr Siddiq in Mecca. He was the chief of Mecca at that time. And he hung him up. So, but the Islam, alhamdulillah, as I said, today when Salat al-Fajr we saw, we reveal the Quran to you, Ya Muhammad, we read the Quran, and we're going to keep the Quran. Anyone can change the Quran, mix the Quran, and that in the Quran, we know exactly is wrong or right. Allah protected, not me, not the people. Allah protects His book. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I was mentioning the dialects that you had, answering this question, that you started having Uthman. We'll talk about this coming up with the codified, dialect. You started having different recitations and different going on because of various tribes. All these new people coming in, it's bound to happen. You have to get your hand on it early on, get control of it before it just gets out of hand, pretty much.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, because that goes on during the time of Uthman, but we had a codified single. This was going to go out here. You take that, copy it, and then distribute it accordingly. Because Uthman's challenges, we're going to get to again, to jump too far ahead of ourselves, as he said, the Shia really began during that time, and a lot of fitna, because all the different people from all these different cultures were coming in, and they were bringing their own cultures, their own practices. And
when we speak about the Quran, by the way, we have 7 recitation authentic and 10 recitation unrecited. But the recitation, for example, when I say Surah Al-Fatiha, Maliki Yawmiddin, Brother Mustafa recited the way I say Maliki Yawmiddin. Brother Mustafa, Maliki Yawmiddin. He's right and I am right. Maliki Yawmiddin, Hafs and Asim. Him, Warish. But this one, correct. We're going to speak in more details, inshallah, when we speak about Uthman, especially, we're going to speak in more details. Well, yeah. Online, Sunnahfollowers, and online, any question?
It's very informative. It's kind of hard to have.
Sunnahfollowers, any question? Yes. Okay. Brother Taimur going to have an announcement. Okay. Yeah. Brother Taimur going to make an announcement.
No.
Offline. Before offline. Next week, inshallah, Rabbil Alameen, we're going to have a janaza online. Janaza online, either inshallah 1 week or maximum 2 weeks. Maybe we'll change the time, and instead after Maghrib, there'll be after Isha. I discussed with Brother Mustafa going to be Brother Mustafa and I actually do together. And presentation first and workshop how to wash a female, a male. But my wife, inshallah, when she coming next week, actually also she's going to have another workshop for the sister. I don't think going to be online, but I don't know. I'm going to ask my wife regarding this. But we're going to have a workshop, janaza workshop next week, inshallah. And the following week after that, Brother Yusuf will continue speaking about Umar, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Okay? All right.
We have no questions?
Any questions, Sunnah followers? Sunnah followers. Sister Layla.
Okay, I'm here. I'm sorry. I thought somebody would use the mic for me here, but they're not. No, this was wonderful. I know I'm echoing. A wonderful lecture.
Sir, I'm still alive. We'll do it, inshallah. Something important also. Many people got sick recently, including my daughter. She's very sick. In fact, there's going to be chemotherapy next Tuesday. She's going to be in the hospital. My daughter. Please make dua for my daughter, for all sick person. May Allah give her shifa for all. Ameen. Subhanakallah bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum.
You guys know I'm gonna have to have some help in here. Seriously. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I just can't depend on nobody but myself. Okay. Oh, I'm just echoing. For those of you on YouTube, my class will be next. Just give me a second. As y'all can see, I'm by myself as usual. No help. So I'm going to have to log this out, then I'll log it back in and try to work these different things, okay? So my class will be in a few minutes. I don't even know which computer the stream is on. Where was AWA supposed to be at? I mean, come on, y'all. Where's Amina Fresno? Which computer is the stream on?
Why you asking about me? You don't like nothing I do no way. You always complaining about something.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the PowerPoint. AWA was supposed to be here to handle this with him. You should see what all I'm doing. Wait a minute. I don't even know which computer I'm streaming on. I just need some help, man. Wait a minute. Which computer? Is mine still live?
I don't see no live thing up here on this thing. I don't know. Let me check my phone.
Cut that thing off. Which stream? Oh, here it is. It says end stream.